So one of John's lovely sayings, and he had quite a few of them, was imagine it's raining all the time. So if you think of rain as being an image of gravity, then you're just trying to align yourself within that. So it feels like your spine is upright, but actually you're probably leaning back very slightly if you're in the right position. And just feel every particle of you just dragging down to the ground. So when you've got your arms up, you need to lean back a little bit, because bringing the arms up brings your center of gravity forwards, and that will happen. So it's a way of just getting you to settle into a posture, which means that you're coming forwards a little bit like this. So sink and relax is our way of connecting to the gravity of the earth, and its main force. And then mind in the Danshen is our way of connecting to our own center of gravity. So it's such a difficult instruction, mind in Danshen, because what we tend to do is look at the Danshen from outside. So we're not observing the Danshen, we're in the Danshen. So when you're in the Danshen, you're seeing the world as though from a strong center. So if you're in the Danshen, the only place you can possibly go is out of it. And so you're seeing the world from this strong vantage. So it's not as though you're looking down into it and trying to get in. You're just there looking out. So in a sense, when you're in the place, it's the one place you don't see, because it's part of you. You are it. So as we stand, we're just trying to keep the mind present with what we're doing. And you do that really just by scanning through your body constantly to see if there's places that are getting tense. So remember that when we're standing, what we're struggling is not to freeze. So if we want to think about something else, then we need to tense up the body. This is the thing about thinking. You can only think if you become tense. So this is why it's obvious that thinking is not natural to human beings. It's something that we've really struggled hard to actually learn how to do. And And so when we're standing, what we're trying to do is feel ourselves as within this field of gravity that is constantly acting upon us. Yeah? So what you want to feel is yourself being always pulled down. It's like there's a streaming through the body. And then there's a strength coming up from the ground through that, reaching all the way to the top of the head. So the arms feel like they're always wanting to do this. So you're really having to push them upwards against that. So that the hands are falling down, but they're also rising up. So there's a balance. I haven't frozen them and then start thinking about something else. I'm relaxed. And the longer you hold it, and the more relaxed you become, the stronger these forces feel, until in the end you're just sort of really shaking with the intensity. And there's that instruction that I came across with, I think it was the ballet dancer that I teach. Smile into the sacrum. Yeah. So just feel your sacrum at the back and just let it smile, let it open out. Yeah, so we're just meditating. It's just a meditation posture. And the same as if you were seated and sitting like this, then you're slowly sort of coming in. You're sort of leaving the world with the mind and just bringing everything in. And then you start to unfurl from the back. So your back, the energy from your back extends into the world. And the ego, which is expressed in the front, with retreats and withdraws. So we want this feeling that this is, so let's just bring the hands down to here. And just feel it contracting. As soon as you put your hands on the down chain, you can feel it better. Yeah. And just feel how it's it's constantly pulling into itself. There's this sort of, it's almost like it collapsed. Yeah? It's collapsing into itself all the time. So if you allow yourself, then you will actually follow that internal draw. You'll go into it as well. The mind will disappear into that. It's like a black hole that's collapsed, or like one of those stars that's collapsing into itself. And then just feel the min meng, the point on the back, sort of doing the opposite. So if this one is sort of falling into itself and collapsing, then the min meng is coming out like a blossoming flower. Yeah. So it's opening out, and the energy from it is just spreading all around the back. So under, around, and up. Yeah. So it's like your back becomes centered about the min meng. Okay. And now just sort of shifting the weight slightly and just using a figure of 8 in the hips. Yeah. So I'm going around this hip and then around this hip. Yeah. So if you think of a figure of 8, yeah, so if you've got this constant movement around the figure of 8, John called it a returning circle. So it's like there's a circle and then it returns, it returns, it returns, but the return, you just take it out of itself. So that's the figure of 8, yeah. And so it can go two ways, yeah. But there's a front and a back to a figure of 8. And so if it's traveling like this, yeah, then at this point here, everything is coming in. But this point at the back, here at the bottom, everything is coming out, yeah? So this is like your back and this is your front. So this is the place where the two lines of the figure of 8 are coming in, and the min meng is the point where the two lines are coming out, yeah? So by practicing this figure of 8 exercise, you're conditioning this to receive and the min meng to give, yeah? And just keep it very gentle and sort of natural. Like it's almost like you're just trying to go side to side, but there's like a lilt, like a rocking, and that gently just brings this figure of 8 into play. So it's like rocking a child. It's got that very gentle sort of flowing back and forth. But but back and forth, not like a piston. So a piston would be like this, so it's violent, yeah? So there's a crash and then there's a bounce. Whereas this is you're trying to smooth off the points of return all the time and make a circle out of it. And so we're just trying to move in a way that doesn't go against our principles, doesn't go against the sink and relax especially. So it's like, let's just go back to here. So, so normally when we walk forwards, yeah, there's a sense in which we open up the front and just drive ourselves out. Yeah. So we're using the legs to push. I'm pushing forwards. I'm pushing myself forwards. And my back is sort of tightening up, and I'm confronting the world with this brash, brazen, confrontational energy. So we don't want that, obviously. So when you withdraw the front and actually get the energy emanating from the back, then that's the energy that you need to use to actually move yourself. And that's basically yielding energy. So it's not bent leg straightening that's actually moving you, which is like aggressive, hard energy, force. Yeah, it's the straight leg bending that's moving you. So it's much more like if you are climbing a rope. Yeah? So when you climb a rope, you reach up and then you pull down. So you reach up a straight arm and then you bend the arm, and so it's as though you're trying to pull the rope down, but the rope won't come, so it brings your body up instead. So that's how we would move. That's how we want to move with the legs as well. Yeah. So when we're doing this figure of 8, what we don't want is to be pushing. It's not like this. I'm not pushing from leg to leg. Yeah? I'm going into here, and then this leg just relaxes and just draws me across. Yeah? And then this leg relaxes. So it's yielding, it's bending. The leg is bending and breaking. I let go of something and it just collapses. So it's exactly like this. The Danchen is yielding all the time. And the Min Neng is attacking or giving all the time. And so I move by just allowing this just to bend and break. And then as I move across, I'm still sinking and relaxing. Whereas if I push with the leg, I'm going against sink and relax. Whereas here, I'm just, and it's just a very different psychology. So something in me I just soften and just let all the joints break in the leg. So here, knee and ankle. And then if we just go back to the figure of 8, just use that as a way of moving. So you're just breaking the leg that's straightened. So here, and then I just let that leg go, and it draws me across. So we don't want to use the muscles. So it's not like we have been doing where I just tense here and pull myself. I just let the leg break, and then that will take me across. So all the time, you don't have to tighten the muscles will tighten by themselves. So, yeah. So what makes it difficult is that The mind has to be sort of ahead of the body. So it's what John used to call mind continuous. So what he used to recommend is like, when you're doing the form, your mind is leading. So your mind is like doing the next posture as the previous posture is finishing. So the mind is always ahead. So it's very similar here. It's like I'm scouting. So my mind is actually in this foot as it's emptying. And then as I break, my body is moving towards where my mind is. So the mind is always slightly ahead of the body. And this makes it difficult because the mind has to be really concentrating. Otherwise, you'll lose that. You'll lose that sense of probing the terrain. And you'll just fall back into the wrong sort of internal, which is like just an internal busy mind. So part of me is already here, and I just break in order to allow my body to approach it. So everything that we do should happen naturally. It's just that we're such unnatural creatures now that there's nothing natural about us anymore. So what we're trying to do is what sort of mind, what sort of mood would I need to be possessed by to make this happen naturally? Yeah. So it's the same sort of mood that you would have if you were, say, prowling in nature or hunting. Yeah. So you'd have to be really vigilant, and you're looking for anything that might make a sound when you move. You're really sensitive to everything around you. So it's that sort of quality. So there's no sense of yourself. You're so out there with the world that you inhabit. There's no feeling of self at all. You're just spirit. So it's the same thing here. And so there's just this gentle figure of 8 going, but I'm ahead of my movements. Yeah. So, whoa. So it's like an exercise in the right sort of humility. You don't want your humility to make you weak, yeah? in the sense of just being pathetically humble. Yeah? You don't want to be groveling and sniveling. Yeah? You want to just become nothing. You just want to become so sort of imperceptible because you're with everything that's around you. So you're no longer what John would have called a turd. He had a great way with words. So you're no longer just a piece of shit. You're energy. Yeah. So you can see how it takes you down into your posture. It moves you gently and carefully. So everything is mindful and careful. It's the right sort of care, right sort of anxiety, if you like. It's that sort of just subtle, just watching for everything. And it's all because you're yielding. Yeah, so this is basically yielding mind. Yes, yeah, so every time I move, it breaks something, it collapses, something is collapsing. But it would only be collapsed if there wasn't anything else giving. Yeah? So something in me is collapsing in order to allow another part of me to emanate energy into the world. And that comes from the back, and largely it feels like from the mid-neck, but it's actually all over the back. But that's the point you actually sort of can be conscious of. And it's just opposite the navel, really, but it's associated with the down chest. So I'm breaking, this is pulling in, you can feel it. You just have a hand then you can feel it contracting underneath your hand as you allow this leg to break. And it is, you want the leg to break. You want to let go of something so that it can just naturally bend. You don't want to. The problem with humans is that we can always manufacture something. We can always make a copy. And that copy may look similar, but it's completely wrong. So I just break and pour. Okay, now as we do it, just try and think, there's another component to this that will be there. We just want to become aware of it, which is this quality of drawing the ground up into you. Yeah. So as I break here, I'm pulling. This is naturally then just pulling at the ground, and there's this sense that the ground has come up into my down chair. This is John used to love this. When you saw John moving, it was very unusual, yeah, because he used to sneak under things all the time. He was always undermining you. He could just walk up to you, just like a normal guy, but you could feel his energy just slipping under you and bringing you out of your route. Yeah? So there's this sense that you're pulling the ground up. You're not just sinking down to meet this hard, inanimate ground beneath your feet. You're enlivening it. You're inviting it to come up and meet you halfway. So it's coming up at least as high as your down chair. Whoa. Whoa. Okay, so this is like a soft, non-invasive approach. So normally when we look at something and regard something, we are pushing it away. There's like a force, there's almost like a draft that blows from us and pushes against the thing that we're observing. And so here we're yielding, which is drawing us together. It's actually very subtly pulling the two of us together. So I'm beckoning. So whatever I look at, I'm beckoning to come towards me. And for that to happen, I have to be prepared to meet it halfway. I have to be prepared to move towards it. Yeah? Otherwise, that thing will feel itself manipulated. And even inanimate objects feel. Yeah? And so my breaking, my bending, so think of a straight arm. When I bend it, it gets shorter. So it's pulling things together. Yeah? So the fist is pulling towards the shoulder. Yeah? It's the same here. I'm just pulling two things towards each other. And those things are the ground beneath this foot and me. So I'm pulling the earth up into this hip. And I'm pulling this hip over to meet that halfway. If you don't do that, then there'll always be resistance to whatever you're doing. The wrong sort of resistance. And you'll always be you'll always be having a negative impact on the world around you. Ooh. And this is pure Tai Chi, so this is in the form everywhere. Yeah. So like in single whip, you know, when you step, so this is straight, and then you yield. So this leg yields, and it's the yielding that draws you forwards into the leg. Yeah. And so you can do the form of this just, and then having the mind ahead of yourself becomes easy. Yeah. You just got to find the right way of approaching it, right way of working. So this is breaking. And then just keep it going, but just sort of soften it so you've got this sort of figure of 8 lilting away. Ooh. And so every time we change direction, so in other words, every time we do something different, then we sink. Yeah, because something in me has dropped and broken and let go, rather than something in me pushing in order to get an effect. Yeah. So so here I'm coming into this foot, and now this, I need a change in direction. So instead of pushing here, I break here. And I'm just being taken down all the time. And so what's buoying me up is the ground. It's not my own strength pushing from the ground. So this is all, like it says, that you really are on the ground. Yeah. It's almost like the leg has disappeared. So your mind is just completely not on yourself. Your mind is always outside. So my mind is here with where I'm going to be, not where I am. So it's like you just, in a sense, you sort of stop and you cease to exist as a thing. You're just this bundle of awareness that's always slightly ahead of yourself. It's exactly what the martial artist wants. Yeah? They always want to be ahead, to be before the opponent, to be so alert and aware that it seems, so they're sort of anticipating everything. It's not an anticipation that's fearfully making you, driving you into the back foot. It's an anticipation that's just pulling you out of yourself all the time. So just feel the down chin pulling into itself. If it's not doing that, then the chances are your leg's not breaking actively enough. So we don't want it to be like a sort of a pathetic collapse. It's the joints are really active. So my knee is actively trying to fly out in that direction. And my hip is just naturally just dropping down. So my two hips are trying to sort of meet, if you like, down here. Yeah. And my two knees are trying to fly out, away, and up. Yeah. So my knees are going up, my hip, and that's pulling my hips down, and pulling the ground up. Yeah? So, yeah, so you're collapsing, but it's a very active collapse. And it's that that brings you forward. It's that that gives you the lightness to sort of move before the other person. Wow. Wow. It's just very difficult because as soon as you get into as soon as you've done 3 or 4, you get into a habit. And then you just repeat a pattern and the mind starts thinking about something else. So to get it always coming from that active spirit that you've sent out, the scout. Takes, you've got to really conjure some imagery that just helps, that forces you to do it right. So you just think in terms of hunting. You've got to, you're just trying to become so small that none of the animals can feel you or see you. Okay. So let's just bring the arms up. Let's just do a few of these. Brings us back to the body in the right way. Yielding. And then just feel how that yield just naturally turns into an embrace. There's a lovely quote by Ezra Pound. He just says, all that matters in the end is the quality of the affection. So it's not the fact that I am making this movement that's important. It's the quality of the feeling that I have for the space that I'm embracing. Yeah? So here I have to really feel as though there's someone here that I just want to hug. I just think of the Madonna. Such a powerful image. So at that moment of embrace, you just disappear. You've got no feeling for yourself. All of your feeling is with the other. Yeah. This is why the pushing hands that we do is just so important. All those years and years of just putting the other person first, even if only in a sort of very ordinary way. just this one. And now just feel the space that you've created. Yeah, so it is as though you're holding like a child. You're holding something that's alive. Yes, if you just want to feel it, really feel it, then just rock a child to sleep, a baby or a toddler, or even someone bigger. Yeah, so they slowly stop resisting you and just totally trust you. And that's very sort of humbling. You realize that that's what you are. You're just a support for this connection. You're supporting the relationship, supporting the connection. That's what's important. It's not you per se. Okay. And now let's just take a narrower step. Okay. So first of all, just feel gravity. So just feel yourself standing. You know, the Chinese love that image of the waterfall. So like you're standing and the water's crashing down over you and all around you. Yeah, so anything that's falling down is an image of gravity. So you're being stacked and packed down into your feet, into your legs. Okay, and now just bring the arms up. And just feel how, as you bring the arms up, your center of gravity is shifting because some of your weight is coming forwards. And so you need to lean back slightly with the upper back to just balance yourself. And just feel as though you're giving. And so you're extending your mind outwards, and energy is coming from your palms and your fingers and streaming forwards. So as you're giving, there's a sense of you sort of stretching, like elastic that's being stretched. So when you stretch elastic, what you're feeling is obviously the movement in this direction. But even more than that, you're feeling the elastic trying to pull back into itself. So it's the same thing here. So you're giving something out and streaming something forwards. But that brings you into an awareness of the natural elasticity of your body that is trying to pull everything back and hold on to itself. Not fearfully or selfishly, just to maintain its own structure. So it's a natural thing. Anything has this, yeah. So everything is actually pulling into itself, otherwise it would fall apart. And everything is also emanating, otherwise it would not be observable. Yeah? So here I'm sending something out with this mind that's looking, you know, those pictures of young Chen Fu when he sort of just looks to infinity. But that's making me aware of a natural draw, and just feel how that naturally draws into the Danqian. So this is your own gravity, if you like. So you're embedded within the gravity of the earth. And then you also have your own gravity. So if you didn't have your own gravity, then that gravity of the earth would just make you collapse and break apart, and all your cells would break open, and you'd just become a puddle, as John used to say. So we need this sort of give and take, this very natural give and take with our own being to actually resist the impulse of the earth to kill us, to draw us into itself and make us decompose. Yeah? So it's this sort of giving and drawing. This is like the life force, if you like. Yeah. Okay, so let's just try it. So it's nice to sort of come into it. So it's a nice exercise. So just let yourself just be relaxed. It's like you're sort of inside and almost like asleep. Yeah. So you're just sort of residing here, but you're just with gravity. Gravity's pulling you down. But there's nothing that's stimulating you to sort of be alive or be awake. Yeah. And then something in you just sparks. So something in you just sort of wakes up, and you just lift up and just extend a welcome. You're just extending a welcome forward. You're meeting the world. And just feel how it sort of naturally brings you into a sense of taut, sort of toned centeredness here. So it's like from being the body without organs. Suddenly you get an organ, and the organ is mainly here. So this is like the organ that holds you together. But then the organ that gives, the organ that opens out and extends, is here. Yeah. And this is why your arms are connected to your heart. Okay, let's bring it down again. And just feel the sort of the process coming into play. So first of all, you're just with gravity. You're part of the rain that's raining down. And then something in you just sort of wakes up, and you decide to sort of come out of your shell. And so you just extend, something extends out of you. Just feel how as the hands come up and out, it naturally drives you back and down physically. Just to balance this, just as otherwise you'd lose your balance. So here, yeah. But on another level, there's this heart energy that's just extending outwards, but also pulling back. It's elastic. It's always moving in both directions. It's moving out of the center, but that makes it pull into the center. The same as the elastic. If you didn't pull it, it wouldn't pull back. So you need to extend. And then just close it down. You just you just let that go, and just let the hands down. And then again, just extend something out. Okay, so this is just prayer. This is just extending your heart and your mind away out of yourself. A bit like that Joseph Campbell quote I gave you. Falling in love is nature coming in. Yeah, so this is like your heart going out is what, if something doesn't come out of you, nothing can get in. Yeah. So you allow the world in by actually coming out. And then just look at the legs and just try and relax them so they're just right on the edge of collapse. If they were to relax anymore, you'd fall. So in a sense, your legs are trying to become just as relaxed as your arms. Okay, and one more. So here, so it's just the beginning of the form, when we lift the arms. Okay. Okay. And now let's just, so figure of 8 again, but now in the legs rather than in the hips. So what we were doing was just imagining figure of 8 slipping around the hips like this. Yeah. So now we want to feel it in the legs. So because we've got this sort of modest stance that's just really sort of loose and relaxed, so we don't need to worry too much about the knees being out, because this is unlikely to happen. So just feel the figure of 8 like you're going down the back of the leg, under the ground, and then up just in front of you, and then back in here, and then down the back of the leg, and then up in front of you. And then here, so there's this sort of, it's like this, there's this sort of action. And so you're slipping under and then bringing the person up and into yourself. So you're uprooting, I'm getting underneath something and then pulling it and letting it slip down my body. Okay. So 1 and 2. So there's this figure of 8, a droopy sort of distorted figure of 8 that's just like this, down the back, up the front. And then you just keep it going. So I'm bringing something in. Now just bring the hands up again. So you're letting something come out. You just feel the feeling of that. You're not demanding. You're not saying, no, give me something. You're just imploring. Yeah? Something in you is just, ooh. And then that then allows something inside to drop down. And now once you're here, just get that figure of 8, sort of just slipping very, very subtly. You're slipping into one leg. Again, like we were breaking the leg. The leg sort of breaks to allow the figure 8 to slip down. And then it's in a sense, it's this leg starting to break that brings that energy up. So there's this little circuit going on in the legs all the time. You just have to be very suspicious of stillness. As soon as something becomes still, it's just too easy just to sort of freeze and start letting the mind wander. So always looking to keep movement on some level. This is why they focus on the breath, on the breathing when they're meditating. Looks like the body is completely still, and yet they're focusing on the part that's moving, because it's the easiest way to keep the mind present, even though it's still difficult, of course. So, wow. Yeah, so it's like there's a play between the 2 feet. There's this sort of elastic give and take. They're not locked together, but they're not completely independent either. Same with all, every duality. They belong together, but they play. And then just bring it back to stillness, seeming stillness, but that's going on. That's going on in the energy. Yeah, so you want to be able to just let the energy flow, directed by the mind, without there being any sort of observable movement in the body. But to you, it feels like you're doing this, yeah? But no one can really see it. There'll be a slight sort of wobble to you. Okay, now let's just try something, just one more thing, just simple, but really strong. So it's simply, what we're trying to do all the time is find the correct sort of tension. And because, when we say sink and relax, students are always being told to relax. But that's really just to sort of get them out of the wrong sort of tension. So to get them out of this sort of brittle holding on tension. Yeah. So that exercise that we did last week when we pulled up the rectum, that's just really important. So that's the correct sort of tension. It's this sort of stretching tension. Yeah? If you imagine like a balloon that you blow up, that you blow into, and so it's tense in the sense that it's containing something under pressure. If it was to break, all the gas would escape. Yeah, but it's springy. Yeah, so you can push a balloon and it will bounce you back out again. So like a bladder. Yeah. So that's the sort of tension that we want in the body, and the place where it's exhibited best is in the dantian. So we want to feel the dantian being like a bladder, or like a ball, or like a balloon that's just filled with energy, that's trying to escape, but is being contained by this elastic skin. And then all the joints in the body have the same sort of feeling. It's like each joint contains like a little bladder that is buoyant and stops the two bones banging into each other. Yeah? And so the more pressure you put this joint under, the more it stimulates the holding outness of that bladder Obviously, if you press it too much, the bladder will break, it will burst. So this is why people get like injuries, football players. Yeah? So there's been a sudden impact that has caused a breakage in something in the joint. Yeah? So that image of the bladder or the balloon is actually just really useful. Yeah? So the thing that we did last week of just pulling up the rectum, yeah, it's just very strong and very important. Because when you have the correct tone in your body, that gives you the correct posture. You cannot have correct posture without correct tension. Yeah? Okay, now let's try another exercise that's very similar to the pulling up of the rectum and the anus. And that's just breathing. But what we want to do is make the breathing difficult. So what we do is just breathe through a very small hole. So you just make a very, very small hole with your mouth, so that and breathe in through the mouth and out through the same hole. So that when you suck the air in, you really have to pull here to get the air to come in, because it's so constricted and difficult. Yeah? So let's just try it. So just make a really small hole and then just suck air in through that hole. Just feel how this all tightens up, it all pulls in, the back spreads open. So everything that we want to happen, happens. Yeah? So, and then push out through that hole. And you see, you don't flop into this sort of over-relaxed, bum sticking out, lazy, beer belly type posture. You retain the tension, it just changes direction. Yeah? So suck in again. So I'm pulling something in really strongly here. Yeah? And all of these centers then draw in as well. Yeah? And it's like and the diaphragm is pushing down. This is pulling in. So the belly becomes like a balloon that's under really high pressure. So from outside. Yeah? And then just blow out. And in again. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. In. Yeah, so it's like with the two diaphragms, this one here, so that the breathing diaphragm is pushing down, but this diaphragm is trying to pull up. So as you breathe in, that's like pulling up the rectum. Right? So this area just shrinks. So it's under really high pressure. And then you just relax that in a way, but by pushing against it and breathing in. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Okay. And then let's just get back into this. Yeah, so when you breathe through that small hole, it forces you to get into the reverse breathing, which is what we want. Okay. Because without that, you don't have the correct tone in this area. And if you don't have the correct tone in that area, then the energy won't circulate around the body. It will just all gather here. And you'll end up looking like a tattoo monster. And sort of the way they look. So we just want to be more like a dancer. So just all this movement coming from almost like a sense of constriction here, rather than just a And so once you wake that tension up the correct, you just feel it's just playing all the time. It's pulling and it's rolling and roiling and boiling and all these. So there's this circulating energy, like a figure of eight. There's like a figure of eight everywhere. Every part of you contains a figure of eight. And that's being driven by this correct tone, this lively tension. Okay, very good. So let's come back to some sort of. Yeah. So when you have that sort of correct tension, so you have a feeling of readiness. Yeah, like you could just leap into action, and it's like you want to leap into action. There's no sort of sense of being half asleep inside a posture and then oh shit, then you have to talk. So you're incredibly responsive. Yeah. So it's like, the word responsive and the word responsibility, they obviously come from the same root, to respond. We want to get to the point where they're the same. Yeah? We have a responsibility to respond, to actually allow the world to be constantly provoking us to give out energy. Yeah. So you need to be sort of not just vibrating vigilantly at that edge all the time.